Hi everyone, my name is Cephas-Alokan. You're welcome to my YouTube channel where I share godly resources on marriage, courtship, relationships, life as a single, maximizing God's purpose for your life, and understanding God's will. Today, in celebration of my husband's birthday, yay! I'm going to be sharing 10 things I've learned from being married and also from courting my husband. 10 things I've learned from being married to my husband. Oh wow. All right, I can assure you that you learn from this video. If you're a female, if you're a male, sisters, brothers, you will learn. You don't have to be a woman to learn from this video. Brothers can also learn from it. So please share this video with them. All right, so the number one thing I want to say is please ensure you marry a man of God. Now, I know someone is saying, oh, I don't want to marry someone who is called into ministry. I don't want to marry someone who's a pastor. I'm not necessarily talking about someone who is called into pulpit ministry. We are all ministers anyway. But what I'm saying is marry a man whose heart burns for God. You don't want to marry a man of the devil, right? But really, marry a man whose heart burns for God. Marry a man who loves God. Marry a man who wants to serve God. Marry a man who is keen on fulfilling God's purpose for his life. Yes, please marry a man of God. Marry a true believer, a man whose life expresses the fruit of the Spirit, a man who you can see and say, no, this is a Christian indeed, a man who is working towards conforming to the image of Christ. Please ensure you marry a man of God. Number 2, marry a man of vision. Marry a man who understands where he's going. Marry a man who can capture the picture in God's heart, who can understand what God wants to do with your life, with his life, and with you as a family, and grabs and freezes that picture and begins to walk towards it. Please marry a man of vision. Don't marry a man who doesn't know where he's going. Sisters, don't marry a man who doesn't know where he's going. Marry a man who understands God's mind, or who is seeking towards understanding the full picture that God has for you, for his life, and for the family. Marry a man who is dedicated to growth. Yes, it's very key, very important. You don't want to marry a man who is not passionate about acquiring knowledge. You don't want to marry a man who is full of ego, I'm not saying you should marry a man who wants to get all the degrees, no, but marry a man who is passionate about acquiring knowledge, growing, understanding better, becoming a better version of himself on that path that God has designed and chosen for him, for you as a family, and for the home. Yes, so marry a man who is dedicated to growth. Also, marry a man who is keen on following God's instructions. Please, you don't want to marry a man who does not know how to hear God. You don't want to marry a man who cannot stand his ground, who cannot say, this is what God has said and we're going with it. Of course, you must also marry a man who knows how to go back to God and say, God, this is what you said yesterday. Is that what you're still saying today? Please marry a man who understands how to seek the face of God, how to hear God, how to say, this is where God wants us to be, or this is what God wants us to do concerning, where you're going to stay, what church you're going to attend, and what you want to achieve in the year as a family, the timing that God wants you to get married, when God wants you to have children, all those things. Just make sure you understand, you marry a man who understands what it means to hear God and stand his ground when it comes to obeying God. Also, marry a man who understands God's model of family. Marry a man who knows what a godly marriage is. Marry a man who understands God's intention for designing the marriage institution. Marry a man who does not pick his perspective of marriage from social media or from views that are not even godly, that are not aligned to God's will. Marry a man who has a deep understanding of what a godly marriage is.